Um, for our dyslexia study, we were in charge of risk factors, treatments, and related disorders. So first off, what is dyslexia? We used the definition that is in our foldable, a specific learning disability that is neurological in origin, which means you're born with it. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. So here is just a quick video of what it's like to have dyslexia.
So I have dyslexia, and it's been something that I'm kind of embarrassed about. It makes little things sort of difficult. Like entering in phone numbers, I always mix up the numbers.
1272.
Okay.
5.
Okay. Can you?
Yeah, just no.
I literally have to separate the numbers by 3 and highlight them if I'm on a computer and enter them in separately. Anything involving numbers is really difficult. Excel spreadsheets, the SAT, literally I started filling in the bubbles on the wrong line and had to erase all of them and start over, and I completely messed up that section. Another really weird thing, CAPTCHA. I cannot do that. I have to do the auditory thing. If you have dyslexia, reading is really hard. It gives you headaches, the lines are really hard to see, word placement jumps around, and letter placement jumps around. Spelling is also a struggle. Sometimes I misspell words so badly that even autocorrect can't tell what I'm trying to say. For me, it's hard to talk about having dyslexia, but the more that I've been open with people, the more understanding they've been, and it's helped me go a little bit easier on myself.
Alright, so we were able to have 2 interviews with people who have dyslexia, and the first one was from a college student, and so we asked the question, when did he find out about his dyslexia, and he was brought to the topic when he was in elementary school. He had a very hard time reading, and he was given a test, so that's how he was assessed to find out if he was dyslexic. It turned out he was. So when asked how was his school experience with dealing with dyslexia, he said it was kind of hard. Writing and reading was very poor, and he was put on there was an AR point system that they used for their English program every year, and you had to score a certain amount of number of points throughout the year, and this student was always at the very bottom. This point system was not something that assessed his dyslexia very well. He could barely read 2 books a year, and his only strong suit was math. So we asked him, did he get the appropriate services that he needed, or was it lacking? And he said that he was given appropriate accommodations, and so he was given a choice if he wanted to take the test in a different room by himself. He was given extra time to make sure he was able to complete his test thoroughly, and he was also given the choice if he wanted his test to be read out loud. So those are not a change to the curriculum, they're just a change to the environment and how his environment looked like, so that is why they are considered accommodations rather than modifications. His teacher knew about his condition and was very helpful and agreed to work with him because his teacher's view was that this student needs to be successful, which is something that every teacher should have for every student. And lastly, we kind of wanted to know how it looked in the public school setting, but also if when he's still in college, how that looks. And he said, for the most part, today he's able to deal with it very well. He's learned how to read and write clearer and faster. There are some times where his dyslexia trips him up and he forgets how to spell a word, but he uses the skills and tools that he was given in his public school setting that he knows works now in college. So we are also able to do a second interview, which kind of gave us a different look on the field. So this is with Tracy and Michaela Tunnell, and we asked, when did you find out about having dyslexia? And she said that they knew something was wrong when they weren't able to read or write very well in third grade. Michaela, which is the student, had failed her tax test and could never pass it. And their services and treatments was just placing the student in a classroom and kind of trying to help her read numbers without flipping them, but it didn't work. She did not have the required services she needed, and so she said yes, that she does still struggle as an adult, but it is much easier to deal with, and not having the stress of passing tests helps her to focus on her baby. So it does stay with you all the way to adolescence. So related disorders to dyslexia are developmental auditory imperceptions, which is also known as dysphonetic, dysphagia, which is the difficulty of putting words on a paper or difficulty in spelling, dyscalculia, which is also referred to as math dyslexia, when you have a problem with numbers, and developmental spelling disability, which is dyslexic. So there are risk factors no matter how old you are. In preschool, you might have difficulty with rhyming or pronouncing words or how to write your name. In early elementary and all of elementary, you have difficulty breaking words into smaller parts, understanding single words, reading fluency, and students normally rely on pictures and the story theme to understand the context instead of the words. In middle school and high school, students can show frustration the amount of time it takes to complete assignments, or they avoid reading altogether, or they have a difficulty of learning a foreign language. And also, dyslexia follows you after school, and so for post-secondary, you might have problems or difficulty pronouncing names or word retrieval, or taking notes, or even remembering sequences. Our first article by Sally and Bennett Swavewitz talks about 3 regions of the brain that are involved in reading. So it's Broca's area, which is for articulation and word analysis, occipital temporal, which is word form, and parieto temporal, which is word analysis. And they use brain scans, which can show the underactivation in the occipito and the parieto-temporals. And the more proficient a child reads, the more active these regions are. So here's a picture in a brain scan of a child's brain when it is lit up in these certain areas. So here's Broca's area in parieto-temporal and also occipito-temporal. Our second article, what does brain imaging tell us? It tells us that right-handed people with dyslexia show patterns of symmetry or asymmetry in the other direction. And that's something that we look for, because if you don't have that, or if you're lacking that, that seems to be implicated in the reading and spelling problems that people with dyslexia have. And they expect readers with reading disabilities to show underactivation in those areas we're weaker in overactivation in other areas in order to compensate. So their mind does that on their own. We also found 3 tests that were very insightful that we could use as teachers or in the professional world as we are dealing with students who have dyslexia. So the Boder test of reading spelling pattern is from ages 5 to adult, and that's used to identify students as a normal reader, nonspecific, dysphonetic, which is the auditory, or dyseidetic, which is the visual, so spelling. Next test is the Aston Index, which is for 5 to 14-year-olds, and this shows reading and spelling attainment and helps identify the cognitive areas of weakness. But a test that we personally found was used on our interview person, Michaela, is the Bangor Dyslexia test, which is ages 7 to adulthood. And this is really used by teachers to also have a quick and easy method to see dyslexia signs. So here is a checklist of this test, which is really could be helpful for teachers as they can see how dyslexia would be portrayed in all of these different areas. So spelling, or writing down the date, or mixing up the date, or confusing the numbers 35 and 53. And then there's a chart at the end that helps the person giving the test to rate the person. So here's our visual that can be added into our interactive notebooks. And it just goes, brings the brain scan that we looked into on paper. So the green is the Broca's area, which is articulation and word analysis. Red is parieto-temporal, which is also word analysis. And this orange is occipito-temporal, which is word form. And at the bottom, we had 2 related disorders that we really wanted to key in on, which is dysphagia, which is difficulty with words on paper and spelling. So we just drew a paper with different simplistic words that kids might have trouble with. The second one is dyscalculia, which is also referred to as math dyslexia, and that's the difficulty with numbers in simple addition and multiplication. And there are sources. Thanks so much.